I'm sure they'll be
Well,
on.
Shea was May the 31st. I think Derek told me May 31st.
And the province is putting a set of lights at Warminster.
Yep. About time. It was a stupid thing they did in the first place. No offense. I do have my 7 pin. Mark, when do you go to Newfoundland in the summer? In August?
No, I go actually in May 27th, we're off.
But then you're not going in August then?
Yeah, we haven't booked it yet. It's probably the last week in August or so.
Okay.
Do you want to come along or?
Sure.
Maybe you should take the Maple Leafs with you, Mark.
Listen, my sister booked to go to Newfoundland and they canceled her flight.
Was it WestJet or?
No, it was something I can't remember the name. I'd never heard of it. And then they went to book and it was 4 times as much.
Oh yeah.
So they're not going this year.
Ready when you are, Madam Chair.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'll call the meeting to order. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest?
Good, thanks.
Public meetings. Welcome and good morning. Today, there is one public meeting regarding proposed development applications in accordance with the Planning Act. I am pleased to advise that this is being broadcast live on the Township's YouTube channel, where recording of this meeting will be available. Notice of the meeting was sent by first-class mail to all property owners within 120 meters, 400 feet of the subject property. Signage was also posted on the subject property to provide information about the applications. All of this was in conformance with the Planning Act. The purpose of the meeting is to inform and to provide the public and the Planning and Development Committee with an opportunity to ask questions or express views with respect to the proposal. The format of one public meeting will be as follows. The applicant's agent will generally explain the purpose and effect of the applications. Second, Township staff can provide further information and clarify any statements of the applicant or their agent. Next, the public will be permitted to ask questions and express views on the proposal. And then the public portion of the meeting will be closed. And lastly, the members of the committee will be given the opportunity to ask questions for clarification on the proposal and provide comments. At the conclusion of the meeting, the applicant, their agent, and if required, Township staff will be given the opportunity to respond to the questions and comments received. There will be no decision on the applications made today, as a statutory public meeting will be scheduled in the future with due notice given under the Planning Act. Therefore, if you have received a notice in the mail for this meeting, you will continue to receive a notice and you wish to be notified. If you did not receive a notice and you wish to be notified of future meetings, please contact the Planning Department with your request. Following this meeting, the information obtained, including from questions and comments submitted by members of the public and the committee, will assist the Township and the applicant's team to determine the next steps. Once the Township is satisfied with the information provided by the applicant and their consultants, an additional public meeting will be scheduled. The Township is the approval authority for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. Once the Township is satisfied with the information provided by the applicants and their consultants, this committee may recommend the bylaw to be considered by council. If in the future, the Simcoe County, who is the current approval authority for official plan amendments and/or town council, decide in favor of the applicant by adopting the recommendations from this committee, members of the public who have provided oral or written submissions but disagree with the decisions may be entitled to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal under the Planning Act. Individuals attending the public meetings by YouTube, Zoom, or telephone may email or write to the Township's Planning Department to submit contact information to receive notice of the decision on the applications. Public meeting for 10394 Highway 11 South, official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications. I now will call on the applicant's agent, Rodger Millar from Millar Planning Services, to please present the information provided within item C1.31 of the agenda package and explain the purpose and the effect of the applications. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Good morning. I'm just going to add my PowerPoint now to the screen. If I could just have a moment, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Madam Chair, I'd like to begin if I may.
Yes, thank you.
As mentioned, my name is Rodger Millar of Millar Planning Services. I'm attending this morning on behalf of the owners, Ure-Tech Surfaces, Inc. and 2780076 Ontario, Inc., who are owners of 10394 Highway 11 South, which is a 5.2 hectare property located within the Westshore settlement area. And it's shown here outlined in red on this slide. As you'll note, it's west of Highway 11 and it's south of the CN Railway. This property has water access only within the Severn River at the north end of Lake Couchiching. It has no access to municipal services. Our client's development proposal is to create 4 seasonal residential lots, which would be developed on private services and accessed by water. Our clients have filed an official plan amendment application and a zoning bylaw amendment application to support their development proposal. This slide shows the lots that are proposed to be created. A couple things that I was hoping just to point out on this slide is, I don't know if you can see my cursor or not. I hope you can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this line right here represents a proposed road widening for Highway 11 as requested by MTO. This area here, as shown on our plan, identifies a 30-meter railway setback and buffer, which would include a 2.5-meter berm in this location. Lot 1 located generally in this area here, Lot 2 here, Lot 3 here, and Lot 4, if you will, sort of wraps around the east and is located at the south end of the property. Madam Chairman and members of the committee, our clients attended 2 pre-consultation meetings with township planning staff, one in 2017 and one in 2021. The pre-consultation meetings identified the property was inside the urban area of Westshore and is designated as shoreline residential. Again, the property is shown here in red. This slide is a excerpt from your current official plan, which shows again the location of the property in this area and its designation as shoreline residential here. This slide is an excerpt from your zoning bylaw, which again shows the property in this location here. And it identifies the current zoning as RU, which is a rural zone. The pre-consultation meeting identified that our development proposal would require the following Planning Act applications: an official plan amendment to allow for private services within the urban area, a zoning bylaw amendment to change the zoning of the property from RU to seasonal residential 3 and EP. It also identified that we would require consent applications to create the 4 lots. The pre-consultation meeting also identified the need for a number of studies, including a planning justification report, a stormwater management study, an environmental impact study, noise and vibration study, functional servicing report, hydrogeological study, archaeological report, geotechnical study. Our applications and reports were filed with the township planning staff on November 9, 2022, and the applications were deemed complete on February 21, 2023. Madam Chairman and members of the committee, these next slides simply demonstrate how we've assembled the results of our studies to arrive at the development areas within the lots. This first slide shows, again in yellow now, the MTO widening that's requested. This area here would be taken into Highway 11. Again, shows the rail setback and berm in this location. The lots are also identified here again. The high water level from the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority is shown in this blue line here. So the areas inside are outside of the modeled flood limits of the property. And the available development areas are shown in this gray tone, if you will, on each of the lots. This next slide again assembles all the information that we've developed as part of our submission and builds on the earlier slide. Now we have, if you will, the identification of some isolated wetland areas on the property. They're shown in this red hatching here. And the setbacks that, as recommended by our consultant, are shown in the green dashed lines around the wetlands. We also show a 15-meter shoreline setback in this pink dash dot line that goes around the property. And again, the development areas are shown in this gray area, if you will, on all the various lots. This next slide again builds on the previous slides and now starts to apply zoning criteria to the lots that are proposed. And what we're left with is these development areas that are shown in the black cross hatching on each of the lots. And here you can also see that we've identified the proposed zone categories of EP in the environmental areas, and then SR3 in the proposed development areas. Madam Chairman, members of the committee, that is our presentation regarding our client's development proposal. Our clients are hopeful that they can move quickly through the balance of the land use planning review by your planning staff and appear before you shortly with a recommendation report approving this development. Madam Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call on the applicant. Does the township's planner, Emily Heel, have anything further to add to the materials and the information supplied by the applicant?
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Thank you to those joining us for streaming the public meeting this morning.
Emily, just could you, Mr. Miller, could you, yep, thank you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Miller. I'm going to share my screen as well before I get too far along. Perfect. So thank you again. Mr. Miller has provided an overview of the proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications affecting the lands known as 10394 Highway 11 South. The staff report appended to the public agenda this morning does include a detailed summary of the application as well. So I'll try to be as brief as I can. As noted by Mr. Miller, the subject property is located within the settlement area boundary of Westshore per Schedule A2 of the current Township of Severn official plan. Although captured within the settlement area, the lands are water access only, as Mr. Miller has indicated. Just as an additional note, staff to identify that the lands will be readdressed through this process to more accurately reflect the water access of the property. The lands appear to be occupied by an unauthorized storage container, a privy, and a docking structure at this time. The lands are not developed with a principal use and therefore should not be inhabited or occupied in any fashion at this certain time. This does include no camping. The applicants are seeking a site-specific amendment as identified by Mr. Miller to the current official plan to accommodate proposed future development of the subject property. The proposed official plan amendment would seek to allow for the property to be privately serviced with an on-site septic system and well, whereas the current official plan requires that new development within the Washago settlement area boundary be serviced by the existing centralized water supply and sewage treatment facility, so the municipal services. The applicants are proposing the zoning bylaw amendment application, as Mr. Millar has stated, to reflect their proposed recreational residential use of the lands. So as noted, the applicants would seek to rezone the property from the existing rural zone to the proposed shoreline residential 3 and environmental protection zone. As noted by Mr. Millar and within the staff report, the intended goal of these amendments would be to eventually allow the applicants to propose the severance of the lands into multiple privately serviced water access lots for residential purposes. That would require an additional Planning Act application following this process, should the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendments be successful. The applicants would be required at that time to undergo the consent application process before the Committee of Adjustment and would be subject to an additional public meeting process to seek consent to sever those lands. The proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments before the Planning and Development Committee would apply to the entirety of the lands that are intended to eventually allow for the contemplation of that potential severance. But the severance of the land would not result from the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. As indicated, it would require that additional consent process before the Committee of Adjustments. In keeping in accordance with the Township of Severn process for official plan amendment applications, this meeting is just the first meeting in the 2-meeting process. The purpose of today's meeting really is to provide notification of the application to the public and to the committee, and to initiate that public participation process by seeking your comment and input, both from the members of the committee and from the public, to assist the township in determining what the next steps are in this case. As noted by Mr. Millar, the applicant has provided various supplemental materials and studies in support of their application. As outlined by Mr. Millar, this does include a servicing stormwater management hazard report, environmental impact study, preliminary geotechnical studies, a hydrogeological evaluation, and a noise and vibration feasibility study, among others. These studies have been circulated to the township's consulting peer reviewers for comment at this time. Given the proximity to the Highway 11 corridor and the CN Rail, the applications have also been circulated to the MTO and CN Rail directly for their comment and review. It is still quite early in the process, and today's meeting is intended to provide notice of the application and seek preliminary comment and feedback. As Madam Chair had indicated, once the comments have been received from members of the public committee, agencies, and the peer reviewers, these comments will be provided to the applicant for their response and to address. It is possible that the proposal may change as a result of the comments and the reviews. However, a future statutory public meeting will be held once those outstanding comments have been addressed to the satisfaction of the township. So that being said, while the applicants, their agent, or staff may not have a detailed response to questions today, it is expected that these questions or comments would be answered and addressed prior to or at the next public meeting. Additional notification would be provided in accordance with the Act once the public meeting, statutory public meeting, has been scheduled. So thank you for your time this morning, Chair and Committee. That's all I have to add to the presentation at this time. However, staff are certainly available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Emily. Are there any persons present on Zoom or the telephone, allergies, who have either questions or comments on the application will now be invited to speak? Please unmute yourself when recognized. Turn on your camera if you wish. You will be required to give your full name and address for the minutes. And please note that your comments will also be recorded and live streamed to the Township's YouTube channel and will remain online. The Township does not have the ability to edit live stream, to remove any personal information provided in the course submitting comments or questions. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak, please unmute yourselves now and give your name and address for the minutes. Are there any, asked, Madam Clerk?
There are none that I'm aware of, and I haven't seen anyone come through.
Okay. Could the Township's planner please summarize any additional correspondence that has been submitted on this application and provide any further information?
Thank you, Chair. We have received some additional correspondence from the Ministry of Transportation following the publishing of the agenda. So the Ministry of Transportation has provided indication that no access to the lands would be permitted to Highway 11. They additionally note that there is a planned MTO widening of Highway 11 through this area. Mr. Millar has indicated that in his presentation today. The consultants and the applicants are encouraged by the MTO to ensure that all plans show the limit of that proposed MTO controlled access as well as the widening. Should the site get to site plan stage, the MTO would be involved in that process. They further note that the lands are within the MTO permit control area, and any development or site alteration would require MTO review and approval through the MTO permitting process. Additionally, MTO would like the opportunity to review the stormwater management plan and potential lighting plans if those are available. They additionally note that no structures shall be permitted within 14 meters of the MTO property line. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emily. Does the applicant's agent wish to provide any further information on the application in response to the correspondence?
Madam Chair, no, we don't wish to add anything, but again, we're available for any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Well, it's coming up. Do the members of the committee have any comments? Member Taylor.
Yeah, just a comment and a question. So I realize it's within the Westshore settlement area, but in reality, it'd be very difficult for us to add water and sewer. We've got to go under Highway 11. So I think that's okay, whether it's a precedent that we're within that area, Emily, whether people within that area are forced to be hooked up to water and sewer. So that's a comment and a question, I guess, Emily. Is that safe to say?
Through the chair to Member Taylor, yes, the current official plan, I believe it's section F2, does require that new development within the Westshore settlement area be serviced by municipal water and services and sewer services, sorry. The new official plan that was adopted by Council in November of 2022, which is currently under review by the County of Simcoe, does include this specific property within a special site-specific policy area that would recognize that the property would be able to be serviced by private services. However, a new official plan currently hasn't been adopted or implemented by the County of Simcoe at this time, so the applicants have submitted the application in advance.
Okay, thank you. And then one other question to the chair, to Emily. The 15-meter setback from the water, is that standard there? And does that give us, the township and property, enough space to put proper septic on there, on the property? That's my question.
Through the chair to Member Taylor, the SR3 zone does require a 20-meter front yard setback. So if the applicants were to seek a reduced setback, that would be required to either be included in their zoning bylaw amendment application or through a minor variance process. The applications are currently under review through the peer review process, which does identify specific building and development envelopes. It has been identified that the applicants are encouraged to identify the proposed septic and building locations more specifically on the drawings to indicate where those services could be adequately accommodated. So that is something that will be reviewed through the process to ensure that should the lots ever be proposed or get to the point where it can be developed, that they can be adequately serviced.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all for now. Thank you.
Member Burkett.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, to Mr. Millar. Like you mentioned, the railway and the buffer that you were going to place, was that something that the railway required of you? Because I didn't see a letter in our correspondence. Or is that just an unwritten rule that we do?
Madam Chair, through you to the mayor. It's my understanding that we had correspondence from the railway to provide this buffer. I know in our other development applications that we complete for other clients, this is pretty much a standard request where there is a rail situation next to a proposed residential lot.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Mandeville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to further add to Member Burkett's comment there. We did have 2 pre-consultation meetings prior to the application being submitted, and I do believe comments from the rail company was submitted during the pre-consultation process, and that's why you're not seeing them with the application on this agenda. But certainly, as Emily mentioned, they are going to be involved in this process, and we did circulate to them. So we may see further comments from them down the line.
Thank you.
Member Minnings.
Hi, thank you. My comments are regarding the water access of these lots. When I looked at the aerial view, it seemed to me that only one lot touched on the Trent Severn waterway. And I just wanted to further understand that all 4 of these lots had unique water access for them.
Who would like to answer that?
Madam Chair, I'm happy to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. As part of our list of reports that I had identified earlier, one of the reports that was completed by our consulting team was an environmental impact study. And the environmental impact study looked at shoreline conditions and identified potential docking locations for these lots in order to provide that water access that you're inquiring about.
Does that clarify it? Go ahead, Member Minnings.
Sorry, no, then supplemental. So will each of the properties have their own unique water access, or will they be accessing through just one of the proposed lots that you had?
Madam Chair, if I may, each individual lot will have their own individual water access.
Emily. And then Member Jansen.
Thank you, Member Chair. Madam Chair, just to add on to that, as the property is adjacent to you and does project into the Trent Severn waterway, the Trent Severn was circulated on the application, and we are awaiting their review and comment as well.
Member Jansen.
Through the chair, Mr. Millar, I'm just looking at the proposed development areas, and I see that in lots, or the retained lands, and in lot 1, they're kind of divided by the environmentally protected lands. What plan would there be to be able to connect those 2 lots, or those 2 building areas, without any impact on the environmental planned lands, or protected lands? Sorry.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if it would be helpful to go back to one of the slides, maybe to answer your question. Can I do that?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So I think you were identifying perhaps lot 1 with your question here. Even though we have, if you will, as you've described, maybe 2 isolated areas, it appears that way by virtue of this 30-meter buffer here. The 30-meter buffer is a no-build area, but there is an opportunity for foot travel and other sort of connections between the 2 properties, or the 2 development areas, if you will, within the area that's outside of the berm. I know it, probably looking at it graphically, you would think that all these 2 areas would be separate, but I think they need to be sort of perceived.
Mr. Millar, I don't think anyone can see what you're looking at.
No, it hasn't come up yet. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Is it showing now?
No, not yet. No, sorry.
Okay, I'm going to try this again, if I may.
There, something's up. There we go.
There we go.
Okay, sorry.
No,
So
that's
I will
fine.
I'll start again, if I may, Madam Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
So we're talking about lot 1 here, I believe, Councillor Jansen. And I guess it's perceived that this area here is separate from this area here by virtue of this buffer. And I can see how you would perceive it that way, but I think the point is that there's a berm in this location here, which is 2.5 meters high. The balance of the area, which is the 30 meters from this point to this point, does provide a connection between the two development areas that could be used for foot travel or any other connections that are required. But again, this area, this 30 meter area here is sort of a no build area. And we've identified the areas within each lot as development areas. So I know it's probably difficult to see here, but we've identified a development area of about 7,000 square meters for lot 1, composed of these areas here.
Does that answer your question, Member Jansen?
Supplemental through the chair. I guess it's the same question for the retained lots.
Okay.
You're showing two large building areas that's divided by the environmentally protected land. Would it only be one area that's actually used for building, or would it be both areas that would be proposed to have some sort of development?
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think this will be a point of discussion with planning staff going forward. At this point, we've sort of taken the approach that, you know, the persons that develop these lots with seasonal dwellings would do the site planning to identify which of the areas they would use for a building lot and which areas may have, if you will, accessory buildings. I know in the case of this lot, and I think this is the lot that you're referring to here, the one that's on the south, I would think that this is probably the desirable area for a seasonal dwelling here, and that this area here may or may not get used in the fullness of time. But, you know, there is an arrangement of uses that need to be resolved. And from what I hear from Ms. Heil's comments this morning, the township planning staff are looking for additional detail as to how these things may conceptually lay out to provide sort of a functional fit, if you will, of where the dwelling would be, where a well may be, where a septic bed may be, that sort of thing. You know, noting that the well would be perhaps up gradient of the septic system, and the septic system may be down gradient of the dwelling itself. And since we're sort of getting into those discussions about, well, how will the lot lay out and what will be the arrangement of uses in terms of building and services, one of the things that our reports identified is that there's a number of options to deal with septic and gray water here. There are incinerating toilets now, which will handle human waste. And as for gray water, there's an opportunity to use a tertiary system such as a Waterloo biofilter. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that septic approach or not, but it has a smaller footprint than a traditional septic system in the sense that it uses membranes and different natural materials to process gray water. So those things are all part of our submissions to the township planning staff right now. And as I said, I'm getting the sense that they, like the township planning staff, would like to see further detail as to how this may sort of functionally lay out on the site.
Councillor Jansen? Sorry, Member Jansen? You're muted. Sorry.
No, thank you very much for the response. I appreciate that, Mr. Millar.
Are there any other members of the committee that have any comments or questions? Member McIntyre.
Thank you.
Mr. Millar, could you please take, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to one of the planning department staff on hand. is it never likely that the abutting property to this one could put in a road off of Harrison Road and therefore allow vehicle traffic to come to at least the edge of these 4 lots that are proposed? The adjoining neighbor has property that adjoins to Harrison Road, and I thought that, and unless of course it's never going to be possible, but I wondered if the adjoining neighbor and these group people wanted to put a road in. Is that not likely, even though we're in a settlement area and we can't get the water and we can't get the sewer? But I thought that if a road was available in any way, that might be of some benefit to the applicant's desire to have, develop this property. Possibly somebody in planning could help me on that one.
Thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you, Chair, through to Member McIntyre. I can provide some initial comments. Perhaps Katie would like to add following. So the subject property is abutted sort of to the north and to the east by the Canadian National Railway and Provincial Highway 11. So it would be challenging to work with either of those agencies to bring road access to the property. The MTO has indicated that they would not allow for road access or entrances from Provincial Highway 11 onto the subject property. But perhaps Katie might have some previous experience in May, which to add some additional comments.
Ms. Mandeville, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Emily. I'm just going to share the map from the planning report that's on the agenda. I think you all can see this now. So this is the property here. So although it does have some neighbors, primarily this property here to the north, which is or does have frontage on the ramp to Highway 11. Harrison Road, I was just looking that up, is quite a bit north still. So it does, this property here, if you can see my cursor, it does have frontage on the ramp. However, this property here is owned by the Ministry of Transportation. So pretty unlikely that they would have a development proposal coming through in the near future. Although who knows, you could probably build some homes there. So, who knows? And then this property here, so the other neighbor, as you can see on the mapping here, it is identified as being rather wet. That symbol you can see is a wetland symbol, and it is owned by the Canadian National Railway. So they don't really have a lot of residential development potential as neighbors. So pretty unlikely in our immediate future anyway that it would be possible to put a road in from somewhere adjacent here. I don't think the Trans-Severn Waterway would be looking at a bridge off of Fawcett Road or anything like that. So they're pretty much on the water access path only.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Mandeville. That clarifies that. I thought there was an abutting property. However, you've made it very clear that it's not possible. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the committee who have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. If there are no further comments, I declare that the public meeting on this proposal is closed. And Madam Clerk, do you have a motion to read?
I do. The motion reads that planning report number P23-014 dated May 17th, 2023 with respect to official plan and zoning bylaw amendment applications for 10394 Highway 11 South be received as information.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Member McIntyre, second by Member Brennan. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Miller.
Thank you.
Moving on to D.1, delegation. James DiPaolo, Urban Strategies, Inc., update to the City of Orillia's Downtown Tomorrow Plan. Hello, James. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Very happy to be here. I do have some slides. Should I be sharing those myself?
Thank you.
Okay, great. bear with me a second. Is everyone seeing the slide deck here?
Yes. That was sent out to us in our package.
Yes, that's right. Thanks for having us here. My name is James DiPaolo. I'm a senior associate at Urban Strategies, and I'm here with Jill Lewis, who is a senior planner at the city of Orillia. And we're working together on the city's update to the Downtown Tomorrow plan, which since 2012 has guided a lot of the city's strategic initiatives in regards to improvements to the downtown core. Today, we just want to give you an update on the process. And since we sent around these slides, we've actually hosted a series of workshops with stakeholders as well as the public. So as I go through, I'll provide some insight in terms of some of the feedback and input that we're hearing from the community and stakeholders as we go. Urban Strategies undertook the Downtown Tomorrow plan back in 2012, and the city invited us to update this plan this year. And a big part of that process was the Downtown Orillia design charrette. It was a week-long day, or a week-long of discussions with stakeholders and the community around the future of downtown. As we were having these conversations, we were building a physical sort of 3D model of downtown to visualize how change might occur over a 20 or 30 year planning horizon. And that became, a digital model of illustrating how new residential and mixed use growth could take place in downtown Orillia, identifying appropriate locations for new neighborhoods, new parks and open spaces, that sort of thing. In addition to visualizing mixed-use growth, we also identified a range of strategic initiatives that are organized under a series of 7 goals that you see on the left there. Don't try to read them. The text is very small, but I'll go through them in a little bit more detail as we go. But these were a range of projects, some sort of short-term initiatives, medium-term initiatives, and then longer-term ideas for the city to pursue. And as we come out of these workshops with the community, we're realizing that by and large, these goals remain very relevant today as much as they were back in 2012. With a few exceptions, we're starting to realize that there's perhaps some merit to either adding goals or refining goals to capture types of things that we didn't consider as fully back in 2012, such as sustainability, for example, was not as top of mind as it is today, as well as working with First Nations communities towards reconciliation. So how are these things going to be reflected in the plan is one thing that we'll be looking at as we move forward. So I'll go through these goals real quick and sort of highlight some of the initiatives that fall under them. And I think our objective for today is to share an update on this, but also to get your input on whether these goals are still valid, and whether there are other kind of initiatives or objectives that the city should be pursuing through this plan update. So the first one is increasing the residential population downtown. This is about getting more people on the street, making downtown Orillia feel busier, more lively, and supporting local businesses and services. And in doing so, making downtown Orillia feel more comfortable and safe. That's something that we heard throughout our conversations, is that there's a perception of a lack of safety. So out of this major waterfront redevelopment, with the redevelopment of the Fram or the Front Street Plaza, and there have been some upper story conversions and neighborhood improvements. So this is something that will be carried forward strongly in the plan update, considering where the best locations within the downtown for different levels of intensity of development, and what types of housing forms and types that should take. Goal 2 was reinforcing downtown as a civic and institutional hub. So a few things came out of this. One is the Orillia Recreation Center, which we hear is operating nearly at capacity, especially with the closure of the YMCA. And then a big question mark here is the future of Soldiers Memorial Hospital, which is still up in the air, and it was a big topic of conversation. From what we hear, there will always be some sort of healthcare component to that site if the hospital were to leave the site or to leave downtown. But some of the ideas that came forward were housing was number one, supportive housing, affordable housing, but housing coming out as the key idea for that site. The third goal was celebrating downtown's cultural heritage and activity, recognizing the current cultural scene as not just an economic driver for downtown and the region, but also just a source of local pride and local identity. So out of this, there's farmers market relocation. Some additional ideas came forward for that through the charrette. And then some ideas that are no longer sort of on the docket, such as this idea of a Leacock Center for the Arts, which was a Lakehead University initiative that is no longer moving forward. So the plan will consider how to reinforce the arts and culture scene in downtown Orillia, whether that's through improved spaces, for example, or public spaces that are better suited for supporting these types of activities. Goal 4 is enhancing the shopping and dining experience. And this is something that a lot of people noted as an improvement over the past 10 years, and especially in the context of COVID, where a lot of retail and restaurant uses in particular have struggled. Downtown Orillia and Mississauga Street in particular have fared quite well in terms of the mix of retail and services in the area, some positive turnover of businesses, and just overall the health of these businesses. The plan will nonetheless continue to look at ways to support this and position downtown as something different and unique from what's on offer at local shopping centers and big box stores, for example. Goal 5 is improving connectivity and streetscapes. This was a key aspect of the original downtown plan. One of the main objectives or themes was to create a stronger connection between downtown and the waterfront in particular, which is being delivered through the redevelopment of the Front Street Plaza and the extension of Coldwater Road right to the waterfront. This is also about the extension and redesign of Centennial Drive. A bit of a mess right now, but once it's done with, it'll be a major improvement along the waterfront, both in terms of improving the experience of getting around along the waterfront, but also setting the stage for new development in that part of the city. Again, this is a goal that the plan will carry forward, but perhaps with more of a focus on how to better connect the city's municipal parking lots to Mississauga Street in particular, as there's a bit of a perception that there's a lack of parking downtown, but it's more of an issue of a lack of parking where people want it. And there's a sense that accessing parking in some locations is dangerous due to the quality of the sidewalk, the lack of lighting, that sort of thing. So the plan will consider those types of connections. Number 6 was creating new spaces for playing, gathering, and relaxing. So the existing plan acknowledges the extent and quality of public open space along the waterfront in particular. But between the waterfront and Victoria Park, there's not a whole lot of park and open space within the downtown core, especially considering the extent of new residential development that is anticipated through the plan. So we'll look at opportunities for new parks and open spaces and what those should look like, whether they're green open spaces for more active recreation or hard surfaced plazas for community gathering and events. Another aspect of this is the sort of the Queen Street Greenway, which is a bit of a green corridor that was envisioned to connect the rec center and the waterfront. With the rec center now built, we think that connection in particular is worth advancing. And number 7 is promoting Orillia and enhancing the visitor experience. And there is a sense that Orillia has a lot to offer to the world, but there is perhaps not achieving that full potential. So there have been a lot of improvements in this regard in terms of branding updates and improving wayfinding in the downtown core to connect residents and visitors to where they want to go. One thing we heard through the workshops last week is that it's not just about connecting visitors from away to downtown Orillia, but there are a lot of people outside the core and in the surrounding townships that don't understand necessarily what's on offer downtown. So making that more aware to people and attracting more local people to the core will be key. Just in terms of a quick overview of our timeline, I won't spend too much on this slide since it's all last year, but we've been working at this since July 2022, sorry. A bit of a pause for municipal elections in October. We started stakeholder meetings last fall, which continued into early this year, where we met with mayor and councillors back in February and March. We engaged Rama First Nation in March, late March, and they're also involved in the charrette last week, providing a bit of an intro to our launch event last Tuesday, talking about their history in Orillia and the shared history between Orillia and Rama First Nation, which was a fantastic way to start that event. And now we're turning our attention to updating the plan, to identifying a new set of strategic initiatives for the city to pursue over the next 20 to 30 years. That takes me to the end of my slides. I've just thrown up a few kind of questions here, and as I mentioned, this is both an update in terms of what we're working at with Jill and her colleagues at the city, but also to get your input in terms of the types of challenges and opportunities that in your mind downtown Orillia is facing, and how this could be addressed in an update to the plan, and particularly thinking about what sort of priorities the city should pursue in the immediate period in the next 5 to 10 years, for example. So thank you. Look forward to your thoughts and questions.
Thank you very much, James. If you could take your screen sharing down, and I will ask if there's any members of the committee that have any questions or comments. Okay, seeing none. I just have one comment, and it's just the fact that I was in downtown Orillia last week, and I think that it gets missed. You're downtown, and I'm not sure why, but there's a lot of nice stores and shops down there, and I think downtowns all over Ontario are having the same issue of trying to promote and have people go downtown. So, I look forward to seeing your initiatives, and I think you're probably on the right track. And I want to thank you very much for bringing this to us and discussing it with us. And thank you, Jill. And we have no comments, I don't think. So Member Burkett, you're on mute.
Good morning, James and Jill, and through you, Madam Chair. Downtown Orillia, there are parking meters, like you have to pay for parking anywhere along the main street, correct? I think
That's right.
So, like, just a thought, like, I won't go downtown Orillia only for that fact, because you can never find a parking spot on the main street. Maybe if you promoted free parking within certain hours to attract those residents that wouldn't have to struggle with parking, because it is a challenge.
It is the eternal question, I think, in downtown planning, is whether to charge or to offer free parking. I think especially along Mississauga Street in particular, the theory is to charge for it. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Jill, but I understand that the city is looking to charge more for parking immediately on Mississauga Street, with the objective to encourage a higher turnover of those spaces to allow for more people to frequent those businesses. And the sort of opposite impact of that is to make those parking lots that are not too far from Mississauga Street. There may be a 5-minute walk, a 7-minute walk, and they're vastly underutilized, to make those more attractive. So the city's parking team is on top of this issue, and Jill might have some more detail, but I think it boils down to not so much a lack of parking, but people not being fully aware of where parking exists. So finding ways to better communicate that and better connect those parking lots to where they want to go, and to encourage use of those parking lots through lower rates compared to more centralized parts of the city.
Thank you.
Just supplemental to that. So you actually, parking in downtowns, charging for it, is a way that you think that you're actually going to get people to go in and park and get out, so the spaces keep turning over?
Along Mississauga Street, just to charge a little bit higher to encourage a quicker turnover, to get more people kind of in and out of stores, as opposed to someone parking along Mississauga Street taking up a space for 3 hours, while someone else who might be spending money locally just sort of circles the block looking for a place, and then ultimately gives up and goes to Walmart, for example.
Well, I hate to tell you, but that wouldn't make me happy. I wouldn't park there if it was higher. The other one is, there's all sorts of strategies. I was at some workshop, and I can't tell you where, is it at your parking lots to encourage active transportation. They have signs that say it's only 2,000 steps to get here, or 800 steps, and add up your steps and see how many you get, those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
But I really believe that, and I know in Midland they're having the same issue. It deters people from coming, not encourages them. But thus you have the problem. Sorry.
Sure.
Anyway, thank you very much. Anyone else have any comments or questions? Seeing none, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. So the motion reads that the delegation by James DiPaolo from Urban Strategies, Inc. regarding an update on the City of Orillia's Downtown Tomorrow plan be received for information.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Member Minnings, second by Member Jansen. All in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a second one, and I forgot to read. Please be advised that in accordance with Council's procedural bylaw, no decision will be made today on the delegations. The committee will do one of the following: refer the matter to staff for a report, refer the matter to a future budget deliberation, or take no action. And Mr. Millar, Bruce Millar, and our time for presentations is, Madam Clerk, 10 minutes?
10 minutes, yes.
Thank you. Hello, Mr. Millar.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. We only have 10 minutes. I guess we had better get started. Can I share my screen?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay, I'll see if it works for me. Okay, this is just an outline of what we wanted to present. I guess an introduction. This is an 8-lot subdivision on Westshore Crescent that I suspect everyone is already aware of. But I do have a couple of screens.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we've had this in our package, but if you've got some extra things you'd like to share with us, please feel free.
Okay, well, just run through it quickly.
Okay.
This is just a copy off of your interactive map that shows the area that we're developing inside the circle, Westshore Crescent, and then the 35 lots that are already developed on the outside. And if I go to, this is just a Google map that maybe gives you a much clearer picture of the development that's already there. And then the 8 lots will go inside the circle. So there was that. We'll go back to this. So what we're looking for is to present to you a consideration for an alternative streetlight pole and fixture, which is a little different than your standard light pole and fixture. And the second item is to look at consideration of a cost sharing arrangement and ask for your approval on that. So I'll go back to my screen. I'll bring this screen up first. This is a plan by Tatum Engineering that shows the location of the houses, gives you an idea of how it will look. And the streetlights are shown in these little black dots around the perimeter. And they're going to be on our side of the road, which is different than the proposal a number of years back to hang lights on the existing hydro poles. And it turns out that the hydro poles are not tall enough to take lights, and I think another reason was that they're already too busy to carry lights. And we'll move on to the lighting design, which was done by Time-At Solutions. I've done it over top of Tatum Engineering's drawing, but it shows the lighting and basically covers the pavement and tries to avoid lighting up people's front yards and their front windows. So that required 12 lights to meet the requirements of lighting standards. And we'll move quickly to the next one. That's a detail sheet of the pole that we're proposing and the fixture with the arm to extend it towards the road. And it's a concrete pole, it's a round concrete pole. And for colors, the preferred color is this Oriental Jade, E52. And I'm told that the color is chosen because it looks good to start with, but it tends to maintain good looks over the years, as opposed to just a plain black pole, which I'm told tends to look dusty and dirty fairly quickly. So that the Oriental Jade is the chosen color that we'd like to present. And my next screen is just a bigger detail of the fixture itself, which showed up on top of the pole on the previous slide. And the color we'd like to present for that is gold. There's just 6 choices available, and the one that was chosen was gold. And the last item then is the cost of all of this. So as part of our presentation, we did this breakdown. I think everybody's seen it. Cost of the fixtures and poles, and then the cost of the engineering and the installation. These are estimate. Well, the street line wiring design has been done and paid for, so that's a fixed cost. The others are quotations that we have at this point, so they could vary somewhat, but we'd be happy to make any documents, quotations or bids, invoice and whatnot available to staff to work with. So the proposal, I guess to back up a bit, there's 35 existing lots already developed on Westshore, and we're proposing to add 8 new lots. So there'd be a total of 43. And when cost sharing was first talked about, difficult to decide, how do you share it? Do you take 8 lots out of 43 or 35 lots out of 43? And somebody said, well, how about you do your side of the street and we'll do ours? In other words, a 50-50 split. So that's what this proposal is a 50-50 split between us as developers and the township. So that's how that broke down. So we'd like to submit these proposals for your consideration, and if they're approved, then we'd work with staff to have it all included in the subdivision agreement, which is being worked on at the moment. So I think that's about.
Okay. Excuse me, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Millar. If you could take down your screen sharing, and then I can see all the members of the committee to see if there's any questions or comments.
Okay. Is it down now?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay,
any questions or comments from the committee? Oh, here we go. I wondered. Okay, we'll start with Member Minnings. We'll go to Member Jansen and then Member Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you through the chair. Mr. Millar, thank you. I do appreciate the enhanced look of the streetlights and the beautification that would bring to that area. My question, however, is for township staff, I believe. Were it not for the enhanced or the proposed different streetlights, for example, if this Crescent or this center area wasn't being developed, would there need to be additional streetlights put up on Westshore Crescent? Because I haven't heard any complaints that the area is dark with the existing streetlights that are in it. So it's around, is this a beautification cost that the township would be entering into, or is this something that needs to happen?
Mr. Burke, there you are. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you. And through the chair, so the standards for the municipality do include illumination in the urban and semi-urban environment. It's under our standard cross-section, I think number 201. So effectively, if the road was ever replaced in full and, by the township forces, similar to how the developer is required to provide the illumination, that would be the case. But that's many, many years away. And some instances may be similar to Grand Tamarack, for example, was reconstructed and our urban standard was used because it was a full reconstruction project. It included some streetlight illumination and some additional sidewalks. So that's kind of what happens in the reconstruction. But in terms of would this be a township driven project in the next 10, 20, 30 years from now? Probably not.
Supplemental, Member Minnings?
Yeah, just so, thank you. And through the chair, so would is the proposal that all the streetlights would then take on this new standard of look and feel, or it's the additional cost sharing just for the new streetlights that are on the side of the road of the new development?
Go ahead, Mr. Burke. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair. So the proposed enhanced streetlights, or just a different standard rather, isn't township wide. Our standards are very clear about what we do accept. Continuity in product selection and design is key. That's actually why we have engineering design standards. So this is a variance from that. The proposal here doesn't differentiate between what would be standard and non-standard in terms of cost. This is, basically a request for a 50-50 split on streetlight installations. If you had to use the standard poles, it would be probably very similar cost, to be honest. The costs aren't aggressively higher than standard poles. But no, our intent would not be to change the engineering standards for the community based on this application.
Yeah, sorry, supplemental through the chair. So we're looking at the existing streetlights would also be changed or not?
Oh, through the chair, sorry, there is no existing streetlight illumination on Westshore Crescent today.
Thank you.
Member Jansen?
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Millar, I'm wondering if there's been any consultation with the 35 homeowners or residents as to whether or not they'd like to see lighting in that area.
We've only talked to a couple of neighbors that have actually approached us. And one of the first things they want to talk about is street lighting, because they say it is very dark at night, and if their kids are out for a walk or they're out for a walk with their kids, it's dark, and that's one of the first things that they want to see is street lighting. But we haven't canvassed the whole area. That was just the neighbors that we've talked to.
Member Taylor?
Yeah, through the chair to Derek. So Derek, typically the street lighting is paid for by the people that would use it. So I can't see how this would ever be paid for by the township. It should be paid by the whole Westshore Crescent to be in there. You can maybe refresh my memory in the committee on how this typically works.
Yeah, certainly through the chair. So there's actually kind of three, I guess two, let's start with two versions of how you would get street lighting in a community. So first would be if it's within our standards, which it is for an urban setting in a higher residential population, to have streetlight illumination. That's in our design standards. That would only be triggered during a full reconstruction of the area and prioritized, right? The township has probably more needs than we have reserve funds. And so we don't select every avenue or every street, for reconstruction or for the urbanization approach. We are very particular about that. We prioritize. So that's one form where there would be, no local area impact in terms of fees. That would be tax levied fee. And one event like that is Grand Tamarack, for instance. The second one is if an area is interested in having upgrades, streetlight upgrades that didn't meet, our timelines, our priority, or in some instances not our standards as well, then there's an opportunity for local area improvement. And what that means is if a petition was circulated and passed for all of the area residents to contribute, to the installation of that, then the township would undertake those works and impose a special levy of fee onto the tax rate of that area benefiting from the property. So that's a local area. So there's two ways of looking at how areas are illuminated.
Okay, Member Taylor. Member Minnings.
Thank you through the chair. So to Derek, so then there are no additional costs to the property owners on the existing property owners on Westshore Crescent to have streetlights put in?
Through the chair. So at the current moment with the developers responsible to provide streetlight illumination, therefore there is no direct impact and cost for the, I would say, opposite end of the road and a natural benefiting property owner, but not imposed benefiting property owner, if that makes any sense. So what the developer is asking here is that there's a cost share to impose that. Now it's, if council or committee was to accept that, there's two different funding mechanisms as well. One, tax levy rate imposed onto the, full tax levy, or special area local improvement, which would see that 67,000, I think is plus tax was 80 something, distributed onto the benefiting property owners. So there's two avenues for funding this request if it was to be approved.
Supplemental?
Supplemental, thank you. And at what point would we decide on which way that cost went?
Through the chair, and I might lean on the treasurer a little bit in terms of the process for local area improvement, but if committee was to accept Mr. Millar's proposal here to cost share, those conditions would be embedded into the subdividers agreement, and there would be, and then at that point we would need to find a funding source. If council decided that tax levy rate was the approach, then that would be a little more straightforward and something the treasurer would be able to find the funding for, make recommendations. If it was local improvements, there's a policy and a process that you have to go through, including the advice, make notice to the property owners, that sort of thing. And I think there's a little bit of time for review and appeal. So those processes would take care, to find the funding for it.
Okay. Did you want to hear from Mr. Plunkett, Member Minnings? Go ahead, Mr. Plunkett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to respond to Member Minnings, what your question was, would the homeowners have to pay? So in the local area improvement section, they would pay. So you would effectively take that 67,000 plus HST and divide it by the 35 properties and charge those 35 properties. The other avenue, which Mr. Burke mentioned, is putting it on the levy, which means all residents are paying. So if there's any form of cost sharing, it's either all the residents are paying for it, or if you do go the local area improvement route, it's those 35 individual benefiting property owners.
Okay. Member Burkett.
Thank you, through the chair, through you, Madam Chair. So in my time here, and my understanding is, a developer, as part of their site plan agreement, they pay for street lighting. And I thank you, Mr. Millar, for bringing it forward. But as the treasurer has said, myself, a resident in the township, I'm not in favor of paying for street lights for your development. Like, we welcome the development and the amount of money that you're investing in our community, and we thank you very much. But if you'd like to the township to share in the profits of the homes that you're building, I don't think you'd be in agreement of that. So, as part of the site plan agreement, as part of your development, which looks wonderful, street lights are required. And, setting precedent now, like years and years of developers in our township that have had to put street lights in. I don't know what the repercussions of that would be, because they paid for their street lights. The township didn't. And I hope you understand. I recommend, if there's a motion, that we take no action, Madam Clerk, if that's okay with members of council.
Yes, and I agree with Member Burkett. And my other concern is having the fancier lights, the concrete. We've had those in another part of our township, and I'm just worried about our replacement costs and the fact that they don't really match anything else. But if that's up to the developer to choose his lights, that's fine. And I'm still a little concerned. Your answer to Member Jansen was, you talked to a couple of people. There's 35 lots there, and no offense, they put streetlights on my street, and I really didn't want them. There's a lot in my mind, because I live in a sort of a rural urban area just as much as they do there. So I'm just wondering, was it a requirement from our staff that you put in 12, or would it not be just wise to stagger 8 of them instead of all that light? Ms. Woodrow, can you answer that?
Madam Chair, if I may just provide just a bit of background, I think, first of all, you'd probably benefit from a detailed report on this, just given this subdivision is over a decade draft approved. And back in time, I can't recall the exact number of streetlights, but a number of streetlights were required. However, that number, based on our current engineering standards, has now doubled. So in fairness to Mr. Millar, in the past, the township required, say, 6 streetlights, and now under our standards, 12 are required. So it's that difference that we're trying to make up. Okay. And I think, in fairness to Mr. Millar, I think the committee would benefit from a report before making a final decision.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Woodrow, but I've made my decision only because of the precedent setting. I cannot say we're going to help a developer pay for lights when I've never done it ever. And then we'll have other people come in and say, we want to put up 4 new houses on this street. Will you help us put 3 new street lights in? And that's up to the developer. So I'm sorry, but I have to go with take it as information and no action. Member Burkett, then Member Jansen.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I agree. Our staff are far too busy, and to set this precedent, like for me to pay for streetlights, and I understand there's a report, but it can be attached, but I'm not in favor of coming back and having it on an agenda. just my comments.
Member Jansen?
Through the chair, I was just looking at the process, and I believe at this time we're not making any decision on what's brought forward for delegation.
So, yeah, Member Jansen, sorry. Oh, the clerk can explain, but if we take no action, that's like a no.
Yeah, so if council decides to receive a delegation, this one or anyone in the future, just for information, it means that no further steps will be taken, and by default, then the request is a no. So no different than if you had someone come forward at a future meeting on a water bill or something else, and you just received it for information, then the request doesn't go any further, and it's a no more.
Madam Clerk, can I ask for a motion to take as information, please? Certainly. Or take no action, whatever.
So the motion then reads that the delegation by Mr. Bruce Millar of Bloxy Developments regarding supply and installation of streetlights at 2595 Westshore Crescent be received for information.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Member Taylor, second by Member Burkett. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Millar.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, perhaps before we move on to consent and the rest of the agenda for today, if we could take a 5-minute bio break, that would be much appreciated.
Thank you very much. You're right. Okay.
Ready when you are.
Okay. Welcome back. Now we have the consent agenda. And are there any items that would like to pull? I did ask the clerk to pull 2.1, and I'm sure we can. Member Jansen would like to speak to it too.
Okay. No problem.
Okay, so approval of the regular agenda.
Okay, so the motion to read that the agenda be adopted, including consent items with the exception of item number E 2.1.
Moved by Member McIntyre, second by Member Jansen. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we're moving on to G.1, planning report, request for extension of draft plan of subdivision Grand Tamarack. Ms. Woodrow, did you want to speak to that? Not that I think anyone's got a problem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I apologize.
It's okay, no worries.
My buttons seem to be delayed. I am here though. I apologize.
We know, we saw you before.
Thank you very much. So this is just a simple 3-year request for an extension to the proposed 40-unit condominium townhouse development in the settlement area of Westshore. And we have seen ongoing work with the file. We continue to work with the consultants involved. And this just is a matter of simply some more time to make sure we get a good development. Thank you.
Okay. Member Burkett, do you have a comment?
Through Madam Chair to Ms. Woodrow. May I ask what the holdup is? Like, it's probably been 25 years.
Ms. Woodrow.
Is it the developer? Like, you don't have to say if it is it the developer's side or is it like it was
Certainly, if I may, through you, Madam Chair, to Member Burkett. So this received draft plan approval 3 years ago, just under 3 years ago, for the 40-unit townhouse condominium. So although the property itself has been subject to numerous discussions for potential development for several decades, the proposal for the specific 40 units before you is just a 3 years draft approved. And they continue to work through their engineering submissions. Some of the information required is a bit more detailed due to Shadow Creek and the flooding in that area. And we also had some neighbor input at the public meeting just to ensure that the development is compatible with the neighbors. So we are just taking thoughtful consideration and doing our due diligence to review the plans and studies and the conditions of draft plan approval. So we're getting close. We expect another submission soon. However, we're just making sure that we work through the conditions carefully and thoughtfully.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Member Minnings.
My apologies. Question through the chair to Ms. Woodrow. Are those townhome units, the 40, already pre-sold? It was my understanding that happened several years ago. I'm just wondering if you're able to comment on that.
If I may, Madam Chair, through you to Member Minnings. So once under the Planning Act, a development receives draft plan approval, as this did 3 years ago, the developer is eligible to offer those for offers of purchase and sale. We do not know whether or not that's occurred to date, but they were eligible to once they received draft plan approval.
Okay, Member Minnings? Thank you. Member McIntyre.
Through the chair. 2 questions. First, to answer that last comment. From a real estate perspective, if the developer and the builder have offered them out 3 or 4 or longer, whatever years ago, they have to revisit the question with everyone who's made an offer on it. If they made offers and put deposits, as to my understanding, that they would have to pay interest on the deposits and hold the line on the existing price from when they first sold them. That's just a comment. Secondly, is it 3 years? Is that normal to extend a thing that's gone on for this long? Can somebody give me that? Perhaps Andrea could. Is that a norm? Could we not make it 2 and have them speed it up, or 3 seems to be a long time?
If I may, Madam Chair, through you to Member McIntyre. So the Planning Act does allow a 3-year extension, and they are eligible to request that. Certainly, if you wanted to reduce that amount of time, that's completely up to the committee. However, there's not a set number of limits of time you can request an extension. And given it is an infill development in Westshore that offers an alternative housing type, we would like to see this development go ahead, subject to meeting all the conditions.
Thank you.
Member Minnings.
Thank you through the chair. Thank you, Member McIntyre, for clarifying that, because I do know that they were offered for sale several years ago. So that answered my question for that. My concern is across Westshore, we have so many developments in process. Some are just that the land has been cleared, and they're, from a citizen perspective, it appears that things are moving very slowly, and that from the far south end right through the north end of a very small strip of Westshore, there's a lot of building going on. And to me, I know with the previous conversation regarding Westshore, there were 10 years worth of delays, I believe. Here, there's more delays. Whatever's within our control, I'd really like to put some pressure on developers to be able to come in and complete their projects more quickly than what we're seeing. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Ms. Woodrow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a general comment, and perhaps Mr. Burke can confirm, but I believe when the applicant received draft plan approval, they also received their provisional sewer and water capacity for 3 years under our servicing policy. So this request for draft plan approval for 3 years would then match the servicing allocation that was previously granted by council in that time horizon.
Sorry, Mr. Burke?
Yes, thank you through the chair. The director of planning there is right. So basically, when we move to a stage of final allocation, we keep it in the books for 3 years, and every renewal, it would come with a renewal of the matching timeline. The intent there is just to make sure we don't, I guess, give away uncommitted capacity to a development that could go ahead within the next 3 years.
Madam CEO, I think you're going to speak to it. Thank you.
I actually had a question for the Director of Planning. Is it an extension or non-extension appealable, Andrea? And I ask that question because it's very rare that council here or anywhere doesn't grant extensions, but I don't know if there's ramifications for you if you do not, or if you lessen it.
If I may, Madam Chair, through you, in response to Madam CAO's comment, yes, there could be legal ramifications and appeal for non-extension.
Thank you very much. And Member Minnings, I understand completely where you're coming from, but from my past experience, just when we think we're all working together, something goes off the rail, and it's not always the township and it's not always the developer, but these things sometimes just to take time, especially if items pop up, like when we had our public meeting about the flooding and their neighbors, and everybody just tries to make sure that we've covered everything so that when it does go up, there's no repercussions. So sometimes it just depends how it goes. Member McIntyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Ms. Woodrow. In 3 years, can they appeal, or can they apply for another 3 years, then in another 3 years, and until 50 years has gone by and they haven't done anything? I mean, is there no timeline? Because I heard Member Burkett talk about it's been ongoing or someone ongoing for decades. When do we ever say to them, okay, you had enough? We've had enough. When are you going to develop this project? I'm wondering if a 3 year and a 3 year and on, when's the limit on it, Ms. Woodrow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, through you to Member McIntyre. Certainly there is no upset limit. Someone can come back and ask for as many extensions as possible. In this particular case, this is just the very first extension. The committee and council have granted numerous extensions, for example, to the Westshore Crescent subdivision that you just heard about. It's had at least 4 extension requests. There can be some dangers in extending it too long. As you know, the province can change planning rules at any time. So when you're considering an extension request, not only do you look at the time, but has the policy environment changed? Do you want to change the conditions to update requirements to present day provincial planning requirements and that sort of thing? So a one-time extension is not typically unusual. It's when you get into multiple extensions that you may wish to put the onus back on the developer for, say, additional or changed conditions. But one extension, I can assure you, is very typical, especially in a settlement area.
Thank you for the clarity.
Okay, Madam Clerk. Do you have a motion for us?
I do. The motion reads that planning report number P23-015 dated May 17th, 2023 with respect to the draft plan of subdivision for 2627 Grand Tamarack Crescent, file number SVT 1703 be received, and that the Township of Severn endorse a 3-year extension of the draft plan of subdivision approval, which is scheduled to lapse on August 11th, 2023. And further, that the County of Simcoe be advised of the Township's endorsement in writing.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Member Taylor, seconded by Member Jansen. All in favor? Carried. Against? 1. Okay, let's move on to the next item, Environmental Registry of Ontario. Katie, Ms. Mandeville, or Mr. Oster, are you speaking? Oh, Ms. Mandeville, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is a pretty lengthy, detailed report. I'm not sure how much detail committee would like me to go into. So maybe I'll start with some high level points and then,
Okay.
So essentially what we're looking at here is that there's 2 ERO postings, which is the Environmental Registry of Ontario. So essentially that's the province saying we're proposing to make some changes. Here's a commenting period. This has come before councils in the past to provide comments. So on April 6th, the provincial government announced the introduction of Bill 97. It's called the Helping Home Buyers Protecting Tenants Act 2023. Proposes amendments to various legislation as listed in the report. So when I wrote the report, or when Brad and I wrote the report, it had only received first reading. I did check yesterday, and it is progressing through the system. So it has received a second reading and is currently with the Standing Committee on Heritage, Infrastructure and Cultural Policy. So this means the bill could potentially be amended from that first reading, which is essentially what's summarized in the report. So the first ERO posting we're talking about is that Bill 97 that I just mentioned. It proposes a few changes and actually a few backtracks or alterations to bills from last year. So council may recall Bill 23 included the removal of the ability to implement site plan control for less than 10 dwelling units. So this new bill proposes to reverse that to allow the township to implement site plan control to properties with less than 10 dwellings. So in other words, 1 single detached dwelling, as long as it's within 120 meters of a shoreline and or 300 meters of a rail line. So the proposal we saw this morning is a prime example of something the township would likely, prior to the bill last year, have tried to implement site plan control on through the development processes. Right now, at this current moment, we're not able to do that, but it would appear that very shortly we will be able to apply that site plan control again. Additionally, they're proposing a change from Bill 109 last year. Council will recall that's the refunding of application fees, part of what spurred our 2-stage pre-consultation process. Originally, that effective date to refund application fees was for applications submitted as of January 1st, 2023. That's now been changed to July 1st of 2023. So essentially any applications submitted after July of this year will be subject to that mandatory refunding of application fees. As I mentioned, we did do that 2-stage pre-consultation process in anticipation of not refunding fees. So hopefully that will start working for us, and we're still obviously going through a little bit of a transition here. I did just want to mention the Act is also proposed to be amended to allow for certain municipalities in the future to be exempt from mandatory refunds. But those municipalities are not named. We don't have any information on how that will come to be or anything of that manner. So I guess that's a wait and see kind of policy. Additionally, in Bill 97, the definition of an area of employment is proposed to be changed. This would specifically exclude institutional and commercial uses. So essentially right now, retail and offices are also considered employment areas. That's the case here in Severn. So it would appear that existing areas designated in current official plans could continue under the previous definition, but new areas would be basically limited to those traditional industrial type uses to truly be employment areas. So there may be some impacts to our official plan there. So lastly, for Bill 97 that we wanted to highlight, they proclaimed a section of, again, Bill 23 from last year, which authorizes the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to amend an official plan without notice or consultation. So essentially, this is, as we all know about MZO's Minister's Zoning Order, this is basically the official plan amendment version of that. So that's pretty much it for Bill 97. The second ERO posting is about a new provincial planning statement. So council's all heard us use the term PPS in the past. It's the main planning document in the province of Ontario under the Planning Act. So if you think about a hierarchy, the Planning Act comes first, then the PPS, then the growth plan, then the county OP, and then the township official plan, and then township zoning bylaw. That's in Severn, at least. There's some other provincial plans and documents that don't apply to us. So basically, this new PPS is proposing to combine the growth plan and the PPS into one document called the provincial planning statement rather than the provincial policy statement. So essentially, there's a lot here. I don't know if council wants me to go through it all. There's a few things that really stuck out to us, mostly that we cannot be more restrictive than the PPS, and any decision made in conformity with the new PPS, will need to be in conformity to the new PPS, even if it goes against the township official plan or other documents. So it's quite clear there's a large emphasis on housing. I probably would argue that it looks like a housing at any cost kind of approach. And the natural heritage policies are not yet available, even though we're all reviewing this document. So very interesting to us in the planning world. I think I'll leave it at that. And then if we want to talk about any specifics in the chart, we can. There's also some questionable financials to look at here. And basically, this is proposing to change everything planning's been about here in Severn for the entirety of my career. So interesting times ahead.
All right. So questions or comments? Member Brennan and then Member Burkett.
Thank you. Through the chair to Katie. Yeah, just want to say I fully appreciate your report, and I can really appreciate the fact that it's extremely difficult to cover all of the proposals that are in place here. I have just 6 quick bullets. I've been wondering if you would consider at least some of these to be included in the document. Certainly from my point of view and many others, there's no need for any of these policy changes to be made. And we need to be concerned with the elimination of mandatory intensification and greenfield density targets that were designed to rein in urban sprawl. That's one of the 6. We now know the exemption, well, you just mentioned it with regard to planning, but the exemption of lands that are subject to MZOs from complying with provincial policies and official plans is so out of control, we have to be greatly concerned. if you're following yesterday's news as to what was done to Bonnie Crombie and the Hamilton Council down there, where they doubled the size of developments over and above or against the wishes of those councils, it's pretty clear that people's opinions don't matter, only developers' opinions matters, and MZOs are a massive threat. And I think we need to emphasize that. The removal of the requirement for municipalities to undertake watershed planning has to be completely alarming to anyone in the planning business. 3 more points. The weakening, these policies weaken and eliminate anything that we can do with regard to dealing with climate change. And Katie, you referred directly to the fact there's no policy on natural heritage. I can't even imagine how ridiculous they will be if they ever come forward. Ontario is also losing farmland. You mentioned that in your report at a shocking rate. People don't understand this, of 319 acres per day. Think about that, 319 acres per day. And the proposed new policies will make matters much worse and spell disaster for lands and waters that sustain us. So sprawl is not going to solve our current housing needs. There is no need for additional land. That's been demonstrated through many reports. So, I think we need to retain all the PPS and growth plan policies that are designed to curb sprawl and protect farmland and natural areas. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Brennan. Did you have anything you wanted to reply with that, Katie, or did you get the points? Or do you want them to send them to you?
I'd be happy to send you those points if you like, Katie. Save you some aggravation. And I know you can't incorporate everything, but a little more emphasis on some of those things would be appreciated if it's not too inconvenient. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Brennan. Member Burkett.
Thank you. Through the chair to Katie. Katie, the one about the expansion to settlement area boundaries. And like, what would have happened before they printed this document? Like, how many years would it take if we wanted to expand it versus what they're trying to do here? Is it a shorter time frame? Is it less money being spent on consultants to look? I'm just curious, when they wrote this in the document, like what exactly, or do you know what they mean? Or is it also very vague that we don't have a really good grasp of what they're trying to do?
So through you, Madam Chair, to Member Burkett, a little bit of all of those things, I guess. So in the past, it was very difficult, as council knows, to expand a settlement area. You had to really prove a need, like a need for employment lands, a need for residential lands, which we're all familiar with through the county's municipal comprehensive review. So it really made municipalities, upper tier in our case, look at the land in the entire county and say, do you need this land? Or are you just wanting to expand the settlement area because the market says, the land you already have maybe isn't good enough or is marketable or whatever it could be, right? It's easier to develop maybe outside of that boundary. Essentially, these new policies to us give, for example, I don't have the exact number, I just in the report, I think, they give a very limited criteria. So, you have to look at maybe 4 things and kind of study maybe 4 things instead of, let's say, 40 things or 400 things. So it is drastically changing the process. I personally, as a professional planner, I think maybe the process before was a little bit too stringent in terms of having to go through that municipal comprehensive review. Certainly our county councillors here have various feelings about being grouped into the entire county and what those growth pressures looked like for the county versus Severn. But basically just now saying anyone who's a developer can apply at any time to expand any settlement boundary and the township will then have to service it is a little bit too on the other end of the spectrum, in my professional opinion. I don't think that's well thought through from a municipal point of view. Certainly in the past, we've tried to plan for expansions and tried to think about, where will we grow? How will we service it? How will this all work? And I think personally, professionally, that should be a township-led decision, not necessarily just hear someone with their hand up saying, I want to develop my property. You township figure out how to bring the water and sewer there and make this happen for us. So I think we were on one far end of the spectrum with settlement expansions, and now we're going basically to the other end. I think what the report also was really trying to highlight is that I'm not sure we're going to get a lot of settlement boundary expansion requests, because it would appear that you could just build a subdivision on some rural land in the future. So why would you expand your settlement boundary? So, I mean, it's really all over the place. You know, we all tried here to look at settlement expansions and tried to look at settlements and how they would grow. And we did a lot of resources into that process. And now, you know, I'm sure there will be a few requests, but it won't be that pressure on just the settlement areas, I think, would be lessened.
Thank you, Katie. But supplementary through you, Madam Chair, where I was going is Westshore is almost, if like it'll take 5 or 6 years, but we will have no more land available to grow in Westshore. The sewer plant is on the west side of the highway. We're deficient in employment lands. Does this apply to employment lands if we were to expand the settlement area? And I don't want to get into a detailed discussion. It may be something we may consider in the future for council's consideration. We definitely will be stifled for land and growth. And maybe we should just leave it for another day. We'll have a discussion maybe at another day. But what I also wanted to talk about, your thoughts about the 3 severances for farmland. Like, I don't know if I agree with, I'm happy to take one, but I would want restrictions as to, I wouldn't want to put that resident or those 3 severances anywhere on a 100-acre parcel of land. Like, I would like it close to the principal residence, but I don't know if that's part of that document for Bill 97. Just your thoughts. The only reason I'm bringing it up is I had a meeting with our MPP, and I was going to bring this to council at our corporate services, but I may as well just explain now. And I brought up, like, she wanted to know some of our concerns, and I said to her, I'm concerned about Bill 97 and the 3 severances on farmland, and how is it going to unfold? Are there going to be restrictions? Where can you place it? And our MPP said, well, I really don't want to comment now. We know that there's a problem. We're looking into it, but she didn't elaborate on it. And I don't know, Katie, if you have some more insight as to what may or may not happen with that.
Through the chair to Member Burkett, I do have a graphic. It wasn't in the report though, so I'll look to our clerk if I can share a graphic. So the county planners attended a presentation specifically on everyone in the county was invited basically through the county planners. I shouldn't just say it was Simcoe County planners. So anyway, this is a slide that was shown by Dr. Wayne Caldwell. He's with Guelph University. He's pretty well respected in his field. He's a planner by trade, but particular focus on agricultural land or rural planning, natural heritage, all that kind of stuff. So this is a graphic from the county of Brant. It basically illustrates MDS, which is mentioned in the report, minimum distance separation. So that's something all of our farmers in the township will know about. It basically says when you have an agricultural building, depending on what that agricultural building is used for, there's setback requirements for non-agricultural uses next to it. So basically this graphic is looking at some farms here. You can see the lot lines in kind of a gray black. And then if you were to have 3 severances on those properties, what that would look like and what that potential impact to the agricultural land would be. So certainly that is something, Member Burkett, that we're very concerned about too here. We have lots of small scale farmers, you know, and if someone could give up their barn because the only place they could have a severance is near the barn, would they give up that 50 head of cattle, you know, in order to get those 3 severances? I'm sure they would. I know one farmer in particular told me he would jump at that. So, you know, is it more appropriate? I think my recommendation in the report is that they should go back to looking at 1 lot or 1 retirement lot as they had in the past. You can just see though the constraints here, right? So if you're taking those 3 lots out of production, it's really this impact, this circle here. You can't have livestock in that area. And then that impacts, all the other farms around that area too, right? So if this farmer over here wanted to build a barn, now he can't do that within this area because those houses are there. So this kind of just shows how the impact, it's not just those lots that you're taking out of farm production, it's also the surrounding areas then limited to those farmers, whether it's the farmer who created the severance or not. So I think it is a good graphic, and there is certain criteria they established for farmers. It is supposed to be adjacent to non-farm uses. There is some soil information that will have to be provided. So it's not as straightforward. Every single person could get 3 lots, but it's definitely a concern to those, especially academics within this agricultural community, and definitely a concern to us, I think. It's one thing to talk about housing and how we increase that supply. I think it's another thing to do that at the expense of our agricultural land and livestock operations.
Supplementary, Madam Chair, if I may, to Katie. So the document showed those lots would have to be side by side if they were going to sever them. So that is in the document. That's the way it would have to unfold, or no? Or is every application unique and based on your interpretation? So would we have the authority to deny it or say yes, or is that something they could override as an applicant?
So through Madam Chair to Member Burkett, it's still a little bit gray. We're not 100% certain. Basically, the guidelines provided or the policy, that's proposed, is that those lots would have to be adjacent to a non-farm use. So if there's already severances there, but that's not to say they would have to be grouped like that, because as we all know, there's irregular development patterns in the township, and there could be an existing severance cut out and you put one on each side, or there could be a severance cut out of the neighboring farm. So you put one there and then you put one on the other side next to the other severance. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that they would be grouped together like that. I think that's kind of a best case scenario that does limit the impact. I do have another graphic that kind of shows that. So this is actually same thing from Dr. Wayne Caldwell's presentation. This is actually from 1976. So this is how far back we're now going in planning. So in 1976, they were essentially saying, stop just letting people create a severance wherever they want and instead have them grouped. And that way it does reduce the impact on that agricultural land. So to me, it's just pretty hilarious that this is where we're back to in terms of trying to conserve our agricultural, environment. So essentially, we would try and encourage people to group them. But like I said, if they're, if this, say the bottom half here already exists, they don't necessarily have to group them because there's opportunities to put them next to wherever they want. So it wouldn't necessarily be all 3 lined up together.
Supplementary, Madam Chair, if I may, to Katie, is there anything in the document, because as we all are well aware, the price of lots today and the demographics changing and people coming up and building their dream home, has smell been in the equation? Because when farmers start to manure on the fields, and now we're going to get inundated with calls about what are we going to do about the smell, and how does that work? Or is that in the document, or have they even given consideration to it?
Through the chair to Member Burkett, this was probably my favorite slide from Dr. Wayne Caldwell's presentation. And I think it really stresses the importance of what you just said. People don't realize that when they move to the rural area, and to go back to that point, it's not mentioned in the report. There's no land use compatibility considerations outlined in the PPS now for farm severances. And I think, as all members of council will know, especially those who have been around a long time, people move from more developed and more urban areas to the rural area, and they expect a certain level of service. They expect to be able to complain about the smell and the noise and the road conditions and the fire response and the lack of streetlights and everything else that comes with that. And that's really, in particular, what I tried to stress in the report, is that from a professional planning point of view, it should be up to the township to decide where we grow. It should be up to the township to make locally appropriate policies. You know, we are suffering already with road conditions. You know, if you add three severances to every farmland, even more than that to every rural piece of land, all of a sudden there's a lot more people who live on those rural roads who expect the type of service that we are only trying to provide in settlement areas.
Thank you, Katie.
Anyone else on the committee have any comments or questions? Member Taylor.
Through the chair to Katie, I'm the one that's disagreeing with this because when this came out on April the 6th, I had many calls, and there's a lot of land that's zoned agriculture out here that can't be farmed. It doesn't look like the nice picture you've got there. And if people want to go from 50 head down to 0 head, that's their decision. And I believe that we should allow up to 1 to 3 lots on property that's not arable. And this will help people like to live in the rural area and give property owners, they can give it to themselves, give it to the kids, or they can sell it. And what's wrong with that? So I agree with at least this portion of Bill 97 that as long as the property is non-heritable, I see everything, it's nothing but good news for the township and the landowner.
Ms. Mandeville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly, Councillor Taylor, Member Taylor, I didn't expect your comments to be anything less. However, I think it's important to note that the 1 to 3 severances are for heritable land. They're not for rural properties. There's no development restrictions proposed for rural properties. So if you have a rural property, it's not class 1 to 3 soil, this document looks like you can just make a subdivision on it. So those 1 to 3 lots are for prime agricultural lands, essentially. There is some restrictions. There are some policies that would have to be met, but I just wanted to clarify that. So it's not necessarily just someone who, you know, maybe shouldn't be zoned agricultural, but is and has some questionable property, and they're going to get 1 to 3 severances. If you're in the rural lands category, you might be able to have a full-blown subdivision on your property in a few months. I mean, obviously, the planning process takes years, so it wouldn't be in a few months. But I just wanted to clarify that it is 1 to 3 severances for farms, for potentially arable land, livestock farms included. And then for rural development, basically looks like it's wide open.
Go ahead.
So just a supplemental to Katie through the chair. So if it's zoned agricultural and it's a bush lot with rock, is anything changed with this bill then, or what can they do now and what could they do if this does go through? Is there anything different there?
Go ahead, Ms. Mandeville.
So there is thank you, Madam Chair, to Member Taylor. So there is an opportunity now for people to attempt to go through the process when we had our official plan review. If they were designated agricultural and really shouldn't have been, they could have come forward and we could have looked at their designation at that point. Because certainly the mapping is not always perfect. Generally speaking, you're designated agricultural because you have class 1 to 3 soil types, which is that prime agricultural land. So there was always that opportunity that existed, but certainly development or lot creation outside of our settlement areas was strongly discouraged and almost impossible. And then with this new document, like I said, pretty much, you know, bare minimum 1 to 3 severances outside of our settlement area on almost all properties.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? I just have one comment, and mine is that, as we all know, and I'm just going to state it, is this is obviously a developer or a development-led bill. And sadly, once again, the government is not listening to the municipalities, the staff, or the politicians down at ground level. They are still sitting in those buildings. They are still coming up with things with no requirement to comment or for us to make comment until after it's done. And we know that it doesn't really go anywhere. And I'm not being rude about it. But Katie, you know as well as I do, many times we've had you and the planning department put forward ideas and explain what the problem was. And half the time you don't even get a reply to say it was even received. So this bothers me. again, that they are not listening to the people on the ground floor who in the end are going to have to do all this. As you said, we're the ones that are going to have to listen to the smell, the roads, all those things. And why isn't this done and why can't we do that? And once again, we have to say, well, because the province said so. And we're stuck down at the bottom with no one defending us or going to bat for us. Anyone else have any comments? If not, Madam Clerk, do you have a... Oh, Ms. Mandeville, sure.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted some clarification. The proposed motion that our clerk is about to read would be for my recommendations at the end of the report. My proposed comments at the end of the report to be forwarded. It does include recommending one retirement lot. So it's not saying we don't support any rural severances. But I'm just looking for clarification on if we want to send those comments before the clerk reads the motion, and or if we would like member Brennan's comments incorporated into those in areas that we missed.
Katie, I think you've probably stated quite a few of member Brennan's. I think he just wanted a bit more emphasis on it, or I could be wrong, but Madam CAO, what do you think? How should we do this?
I think the clerk was going to read a motion to accept Ms. Mandeville's changes with some emphasis on what Councillor Brennan was looking for. I was just going to clarify, because I think what I heard was Council was in agreement with the extra emphasis that Councillor Brennan had, but I wasn't sure you were on the same page with Councillor Taylor's changes. So staff would need to clarify on if you want us to do a different approach on the rural severances. Is that correct, Katie?
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for?
But I think Councillor Taylor, Ms. Mandeville clarified for him. He was under the impression, whereas a lot of people have been, that it wasn't the prime agriculture, arable livestock. The fact that now it has changed the other way for 3 lots, which won't affect that. And we will be able to probably do that in the future, right, Councillor Taylor, Member Taylor?
Yeah, through the chair to Katie. So is my understanding that it's going to be easier to sever lots after Bill 97 to go through and non-farmable arable land, zoned agricultural?
Ms. Mandeville?
Through the sorry, allergies too. Through the chair, correct. My recommendation, though, or the comments I'm proposing that Township Council endorse, would be to not allow that to occur, just for 1 lot for each of those people outside of settlement areas, back to kind of a return of that retirement lot that people had in the, I think it was early 90s, late 80s. So that was my proposal, so that you can't just have a rural subdivision or those 3 lots on arable or prime ag lands.
Member Taylor?
So we have a disagreement then on that.
Well, no offense, but I hope someone listens to anything we write. I know that's not very positive, but hey. Madam CAO.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to highlight. I heard a disagreement there. So for Ms. Mandeville to make the comments, we need to come to an agreement. So either council supports the recommendations that as Katie has presented it, or you'll need to propose some sort of amendment that satisfies Councillor Taylor. So it's hard for us to address it if you're not on the same page.
Okay, Member Taylor and then Member Brennan.
Yeah, unless it's changed to 3, then I would not support it.
Okay, Member Brennan.
I'm not sure of the procedure, but I would appreciate it if we could consider Councillor Taylor's comment separate from some of the stuff that I listed that I'd like to see incorporated. I wouldn't want to see all my comments gone because of one argument.
Oh, no, Member Brennan, we were just asking. I'll let Madam CEO speak to it. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Brennan, that's not intended. I think council was in agreement with the changes you proposed. We haven't heard consensus on the severance piece. So your side is good, and I think the overall is good. We just need to get consensus on that piece so that the clerk can either change the motion or leave it as it is.
So I don't know if we're going to get consensus, but I guess we can give it a kick. Member Burkett and then Member Jansen.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. So these are the 4 points that are on page 7. Is that
yes?
So there are sections of it like this natural heritage features. Yeah, I want to protect our lands, but there's, as we are all well aware, and to member Taylor's point, like they blanketed the majority of our township, and I don't think it's fair that they've mapped the whole thing natural heritage protected. Like there's areas that up in Ward 1 that are blocked that are not, shouldn't be heritage protected. So how do you delineate between, or maybe Katie, you can help me with this.
Hey, Katie.
Through Chair Cox to Member Burkett. So I just wanted to clarify that the agricultural mapping that went along with that natural heritage mapping has completely been scrapped. So although we don't have the natural heritage policies released yet, and they're supposed to be available under separate comment, I think it's safe to bet that that natural heritage mapping will also be scrapped. So that's not really on the table right here in terms of that concrete mapping.
What you've got here, Katie, protection of shoreline and natural heritage features. What do you mean by that then, please?
Go ahead.
Through Chair Cox again, back to Member Burkett. Sorry, Member Burkett, I believe that's in the site plan control item. Okay. So that's a little bit separate from the PPS because they're reintroducing site plan control on our waterfront areas.
Sorry, go ahead, Madam Chair. So I know that what's ironic about the document is if you look at the lands, for the benefit of the other members of council, if you look at the lands below Barrie, so none of the lands below Barrie that are prime agricultural farmland, like this is, those lands are just prime. Yeah. There's no natural heritage mapping on them at all. Yet they come up into North Simcoe, anything north of Barrie, they've now, well, you're telling me, Katie, that they're going to remove that.
Yep.
See, that's what I can't wrap my head around. So our lands aren't as good as the lands south of here, yet they're going to allow the south lands to be developed. And now you're telling us they're going to allow our lands as well. Okay. All right, fine.
Member Jansen?
Yep. I just wanted to say that I did support Mr. Brennan's or Member Brennan's comments to be included in the planning report. And I also have to say I do support Member Taylor's comments as well about land that is not arable. It came up for me as well, residents that were concerned, pointing out the land that they own that's rocky or is not suitable at all for farming, and the possibility of severing lots there. And I don't think we want that to go run away either on us, that there's tons of lots coming up everywhere, but I do support the addition of some lots in our township on lands that are not arable.
Yeah, and I do too. So I'm just wondering where you say rejects the notion that this increased supply should largely occur outside of settlement areas, which will occur within Severn's expansive agricultural land base. So, Katie, is there no way we can say that we do support that? Like, I mean, it is an agricultural land base, but is there no way we can do a spin on it to say that we agree that we don't want any more than 3? Instead of saying it could be all kinds, just say no more than 3.
So to Madam Chair's point, I think my comment does cover that. So number 2 here, it states the Township of Severn supports maintaining policy direction for limited lot creation outside of settlement areas, such as those in the current PPS for rural lands, which would allow for an increased supply when the growth plan restrictions are removed. Support is not provided for as of right permissions for multiple rural severances, rural subdivision, and 3 lots on each agricultural parcel subject to minimum criteria. So, and then I go on to say limited lot creation could be further defined within the local official plan, such as a return to the retirement lot. So I do think that is covered in there. I anticipated that council would not be in support of no severances outside our settlement areas. I think, though, we just want to hone in on the fact that we would like to prescribe that criteria for agricultural and rural severances rather than it just kind of being open season.
And I think we all agree with that. And I also believe that this is just comments because it could come back and things will just carry on exactly. And we've already made our comments that we do agree with what I think and Member Jansen and Member Taylor do. And thus, we're really not saying we don't. Okay, thanks. Are you okay with that, Member Taylor?
Just that I could jump in through, but
yeah.
in that, but Katie, and you're saying that you're not supporting the 3 lots.
No, number 2.
And number 2 is saying you do not allow 3 lots. So are we or aren't we?
I don't think she said we're not. She was concerned.
Yes, support is not provided for as a right of way for blah 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 blah, and it's limited to 1 retirement lot.
Through Chair Cox, the intent of that point there is that we don't permit as of right. So as of right would be, no criteria. It's open season on the rural lands, and you can get 3 lots on each farm property. So that's not to say we wouldn't support 3 lots on a certain farm property. It's my comment is we don't support as of right, a blanket, everyone can have 3 lots on an arable, livestock, etc. farm. The comment is saying we don't support all severance potential on all properties. We are supporting limited lot creation, and we'd like the ability to design those policies in our official plan. So we like the ability, I think, just as we did through the official plan review, to say, here's the examples, here's what we could support for lot creation outside of our settlement areas. Right now, the policies read that the township cannot establish any criteria, that the PPS would trump any township criteria. So what I'm trying to say here is that give some power back to the township and allow the township to create development policies. Right now, the current PPS speaks to allowing for limited lot creation outside of settlement areas. The reason we can't do that in Severn is because we have the growth plan, which says you cannot do that. If we didn't have the growth plan and we just had the PPS, we right now could contemplate many examples of rural severances on non-arable land, those rocky fields you spoke of, all of that kind of thing. If we were north of the Severn River, we could contemplate all those right now. And then it would be up to us to define what that limited lot creation is like, to set criteria in our official plan. But because we have the growth plan, we can't do that right now. So what my proposal basically is saying is go to the current PPS, erase the growth plan, and then those are the kind of severance policies we want to design in our own official plan for the township.
Member Taylor, is that okay?
I'm still thinking about that.
Okie doke. Maybe if you took the not out of the big capital letters. Member Paquette.
Thank you, through Madam Chair. Katie, the comments that you just talked about, now you've got me confused. You're saying let us. So are you allowing, and I know that's what Member Taylor is thinking about, are you going to allow the 3 lots to be severed? Is that what you're saying in the document?
In prime.
So through Chair Cox to the comments here from everyone, what I'm trying to say here is give the township the opportunity to establish criteria in our official plan that council would have to endorse, that council would be involved in developing for how we will do lot creation in the rural and agricultural area. Don't put that in a provincial document. Don't name an arbitrary number of lots. Just let the township design criteria for the township.
Which is what we've been asking for.
But I think through you, Madam Chair, if I may, I think what we've been fighting for is to allow those severances off those,
that's right,
those pieces of farmland. And to Member Taylor's comments, like parts of his ward, absolutely, like it would sustain 10 homes because the land is not meant for farming. All right, so that's what you're saying. So the growth plan, how does it fit into here? Because you mentioned the growth plan. Are they going to scrap the growth plan as well? Mm-hmm. Oh, I love it. Perfect. Great.
So bottom line is what Katie's trying to say is what we've said all along is why can't we have a voice in this, and why can't we make decisions about our area that we know and we can go look at? And that is what I'm pretty sure she's trying to say here is this is now an opportunity for us to be able to say to the government, this is what we want. We want control. We want to say that our council and our staff can make the decisions on where people can sever a lot outside of settlement areas, right? Okay.
So supplement. Through you, Madam Chair. So based on what you just said, and to Katie, so the province would give us the guidelines that we can't deviate out of, and then we as a township, working with, well, yourself and your staff, we would come up with a made in Severn solution that benefits and helps us grow. Okay.
Member Taylor.
Just in summary, if Bill 97 goes through as amended that you think it's going to go through, and my original question was, is it going to be easier for people with property zoned agricultural to get up to 3 lots?
Yep.
Through the chair.
Writing somewhere, that's all. I guess it's being videotaped, so that's good.
So through the chair, sorry, I just want to clarify that Bill 97 is separate from the proposed PPS.
Yep.
But yes, if the proposed PPS goes through exactly as written right now, it will be easier for people everywhere outside of our settlement areas to have up to 3 lots.
Thank you.
Okay. It will also, of course, be all those things we talked about before, like the demand on the roads, the fire services, the smells, the noise, etc. That will also all come into play.
Okay. I think we're here. I think, Madam Chair, you can read that motion. Is everyone okay with that? If we read the motion and hear what it has to say? Thank you.
Okay, so at the end of the day, I think the only additional comments to be added then are the ones from Member Brennan.
Right.
Okay. So the motion then will read that planning report number P23-017 dated May 17th, 2023 with respect to Environmental Registry of Ontario ERO postings, including the proposed provincial planning statement PPS, be received, and further that staff be authorized to provide comments on the 2 ERO postings being 0196822 and 0196813 as outlined at the end of the analysis section of this report, with additional comments provided by Member Brennan, and further that staff be authorized to submit the comments immediately.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Member Brennan, seconded by Member Middings. All in favor? Oops, carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay. Now we're going to new business. General program grant application. Anyone have any comments on the Victorian Order of Nurses program? I gather that there is money still in the general program grant application, Madam Clerk?
Yes, there is.
Member Minnings.
Thank you.
Member Jansen.
Thank you. I have a question through the chair to staff. I just need help understanding when in some instances we might waive the rental fee and other instances we might award it through a grant.
Well, is there anyone out there who'd like to answer that question?
I'll give it a shot.
There we go, Mr. Plunkett. Thank you.
If I can, through the chair to Member Minnings. Typically, we shouldn't be waiving the fee unless we're doing it via a grant. Because we actually need to keep track of those numbers anyways. So if we are doing it, we should be doing it via the grant services. Now, in this case, you know, it's not, it is simply, it's going to be a transfer from, we'll create the artificial fee that they would have paid, and then we'll offset it in the grant section. But typically we wouldn't, or we shouldn't be in any situation waiving the fees without doing it via a grant in this particular type of instance.
Okay, thank you very much. Member Jansen?
Thank you. I'd just like to say that I'm in support of this this program. I believe it's beneficial to our community. From what I see, it looks that it is a free service that's being provided to seniors in the community for some exercise. That's once a week. I think we should encourage these type of activities to take place in our township. And again, I stand in support.
Thank you very much. Member McIntyre.
To the chair, I completely agree with Member Jansen. That's a terrific thing for the seniors to be doing, and I fully support it.
Thank you very much. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Motion reads that a general program grant in the amount of $668.96, including HST, be approved to the Victorian Order of Nurses.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by member Burkett, second by member Jansen. All in favor? Carried. So now we go back to correspondence, E2. M's Cafe. Oops.
I believe this was pulled by member Jansen and yourself.
Okay. Member Jansen, would you like to speak to it?
Yeah, the land, I believe, is township property. It resides, or it's located between 16 and 18 Coldwater Road in the community of Coldwater. For the past few years, I know at least since I've been located in Coldwater, the property there has been used as a makeshift patio. There are a couple of chairs that are put out front of this cafe, and then a couple of chairs that are put beside in this alleyway. I do think that this is a good use of the space. Coldwater does not have a lot of downtown area where there's patio space right on the roadway, with the exception of maybe the Old Familiar, although there is a parking lot that's in front of their patio area. I do hope that we can support this initiative. I know that it helps with bringing people into the community. There's a lot of bikers, road cyclists that come into the community that use this space as a pit stop. And I do hope that we can continue to allow this use.
Anyone else have any comments or concerns? Okay, member Taylor and member McIntyre.
As a frequent visitor and customer to this location, I agree 100% with Councillor Jansen.
Thank you.
It's great. I support it.
Member McIntyre?
Yeah, through the chair, if there's no hazard, no danger to anything or the public, I fully support it.
Okay. That's been there for ages, and Madam Clerk, I support it also. Go ahead.
Thank you. So in order to facilitate this going forward, staff had a bit of a discussion on this yesterday. So we will need them to do an encroachment agreement in order to allow this to go forward. So if council does approve it, then we will move forward with the encroachment agreement. It turns out with all our records researching that no permissions were actually ever granted to the old owner. So, so just in order to get things in order for the future and to ensure that the appropriate insurance and indemnification are in place for us, we'll just require them to do an encroachment agreement.
May I ask a question then? Is it through the owner of the building or the business person that does the encroachment agreement?
It should be, oh gosh. We can make them both sign it.
I think that would be grand. Okay. Member Minnings? Did you have a question?
Yeah, those were my, yes, thank you, through the chair. My questions were about legal liability. Should there be an incident that happens on that, and I wouldn't want the township to have that responsibility. So if that encroachment agreement and liability is outlined in advance, because it could be precedent setting then for other people to use township space along roadways, etc., for other uses.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And so one thing through an agreement is we can limit the number of tables and chairs if and this would be a discussion with them, whether or not they get use of both sides, because we do have to ensure that we can get to the back. From what I understand, there's a hydro connection back there that we need to ensure access is maintained to. But yeah, so we can work with them on that.
Yep. And it's worked for 8-10 years, so I'm sure now everybody's gotten used to it. And the bikes now are at the back. They used to be sort of in the way there, and now they put them at the back of the alleyway, so that helps also. Okay, you have a motion, Madam Clerk?
Certainly. So the motion is that M's Cafe be approved to utilize the township's lands as a patio, conditional upon the business owner, I'm just using the word owner, but we mean both parties, entering into an encroachment agreement.
May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by member Jansen, second by member Taylor. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we're going to go into closed session. Did you want a quick break or? Thank you.
Quick, please.
Quick. Okay.
Okay, so the motion to go into close reads that committee resolve in a closed session and that the meeting is hereby now closed to the public pursuant to the Municipal Act SO 2001, Chapter 25, Section 2392, for the purpose of considering advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. And B, a position plan and procedure or criteria for instructions to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board.
Move and a seconder, please. Moved by Member McIntyre, seconded by Member Minnings. All in favor? Carried. So we'll just wait one moment while the clerk
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so the motion reads that closed session adjourn at 12:18 p.m. and that the meeting is hereby now reopened to the public.
Mover and a seconder. Moved by member Brennan, seconded by member Jansen. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Okay, next motion reads that the verbal report from the Chief Administrative Officer be received and that staff be directed to proceed with items 1, 2, and 4 from the confidential staff report P23-009 dated March 15th, 2023, and that items 3, 5, and 6 are no longer required.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Brennan, seconded by Councillor Member McIntyre. All in favor? Carried.
Okay.
Madam Clerk.
The next motion reads that confidential planning report number P23-016 dated May 17th, 2023 with respect to lands described as lot 55, the part lot 56 on plan 1079 known municipally as 3028 First Street and 9347 Highway 11 North be received and that the committee directs staff to proceed with option 2.
I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by member Minning, second by member Taylor. All in favor? Carried. Adjournment.
Let this meeting be and is here now my adjourned at 12:19 p.m.
Mover and a seconder, please. Moved by member Jansen, second by member Burkett. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, everyone. It was a good meeting.
Much.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.